I love it. Bill challenges me just about every time we do this. He picks a reading that does my talk, and then I have to figure out how I'm going to work around that. But the advantage of working with Emma Curtis Hoskins is it really is mystical. You read it 3 times and you're still going, I think I understand that. I'm starting to get this image of it. Sort of like, have you ever read Emerson? It's the same kind of thing. It's this beautiful painting of wonderful imagery, and as soon as you close the book, it goes away. It's like, what was he talking about? You know, for millennia, the idea of God has been mysterious, right? It's taken an entire priestly class for most of human history to interpret what this thing of spirituality is that we're trying to understand. And I think along the way they made it even more mysterious, right? Job security.
You read my mind.
You know? Because if you can't understand it and you require me to tell you what it means, right? Then I'm going to have pretty good security for most of my life. And if you can find enough people to do that, it's not only going to be security, it's going to be pretty opulent. And that way I can talk about the opulence of spirit in the world. Not to disparage my colleagues in the religious professions and the ministers and pastors and people out there who are truly doing good work and bringing the message to people that there is a power and a presence by whatever avenue or channel that they're using to bring that along, and to let people know that this is available for us in each moment. My point is, it's not all that mysterious. It really isn't. And what we teach in the science of mind and spirit is that we can understand it. There are principles that we can understand. Now, I will admit, there are parts that are mysterious. Like, why is blue blue? Think about this. From a scientific perspective, you might look at this and say, well, because it has, these particular chemical properties that reflect the light into this pattern and absorb the other light, and it comes out looking blue. Why? Well, because light breaks into this spectrum in which certain objects absorb certain parts of it, and our retina actually respond to those, upside down, by the way, and see it as blue. Why? Well, because we've developed an entire lexicon of language so that we can have a commonality of discussion to talk about why this is blue. Why? Because. Every parent knows that one, right? Why? Because I said so. Stop asking. See, that's the mysterious part, is we really don't know why. And we may never know why. We can get little pieces of how this thing happens, right? That's science. We take an idea which starts as a question, right? What's going on here? And then we look into it and we delve into it and we find out the hows of it going on here. Like particle physics, they got to the point where they understand it is, it's not anything until you look at it. What? Why? Because we haven't figured out the next level of that one yet. Until you come to the science of mind and spirit. Because when you look at it, you have an opportunity to choose what your consciousness is going to do with it. You see, there are some things we may never understand in the human reality, in the spiritual reality. And the entire spiritual process and the mystery of all this is that we journey along this path of deeper and deeper understanding. First of our external world and then of our internal world. And as we get clearer and clearer on what our internal world is, we have a greater spiritual understanding, I guess. Some people have raised that up to the point where their clarity of understanding was so profound that they changed the course of human history by the words and actions that they took. We call those avatars. Generally, they have a religion following them, with a priestly class. which is staying in business pretty frequently. But at the very core of it, there is a point at which we individually have to connect with what this source of life is. We may go through our entire lives never once asking, what is my purpose? And that's okay. We can live life as a responsive mechanism. Okay, I'm just floating around watching whatever happens to me and responding to it as it comes along. And a lot of people do that, and that's okay. And they're perfectly happy with that. So I don't disparage that at all. You know? I mean, that's a wonderful, ignorance is bliss. Doesn't mean you're not subject to the laws, it just means that you're blissful about it. You know? But there is a part of this that we can understand and that we can use in our lives if we are willing to look at understanding it and experimenting with it until we have a belief and a faith in it. Right? So what we teach in the science of mind and spirit is that there are definite principles that we can discern by their activity in the world and the effects caused by them, and that we can use those principles if we understand them. This is a really simple thing. We talk about this in our classes all the time. If you understand the principles of electricity, you can make it do wonderful things. Lights and air conditioning, we don't need that yet. Heating, you know, all the stuff that electricity does for us, right? That when we understand it. If you don't understand it, you get a different hairstyle. Right? Right? Because you used it wrong and it bit you. Right? And so spiritual principles work along the same lines. They are invisible principles that we can determine by their effects. We've never seen a principle other than at school. I know, but that's spelled differently. Just to remind you guys, we are talking about PLE, not PAL. Principle. No one's ever seen a principle. It's an idea in mind that most of us have tested and found it to work the same for everybody, right? If I had a tennis ball, I'd do the gravity thing. Everybody knows about gravity, but they don't know why gravity works. Right? So there are also spiritual principles that we can determine in our life by the effects that they have in our experience. So we have a personal laboratory that doesn't require a priestly class to connect us with this thing that we call spirit and the power behind it. That omnipotence that Elizabeth was reading about, that omnipresence of this principle that is, we are living, moving, and having our being. It is the principle of life. And it's not really mysterious unless we want to make it that way. We're all alive, I am assuming. To some degree or another, we are all alive here. That's pretty self-evident. Why that is, couldn't tell you. The number of things that happened in the world, in the universe, to ensure that this group of people was here at this moment, together, in this unique experience, which will never again be replicated upon human history, is just astounding. Each one of us made decisions this morning. So I'm going to show up, or I'm not going to show up. Right? Each one, you know, all of the different things that came together to make this particular thing happen. Maybe that's the mystery of stuff. But the part that's not really mysterious is that we can use principles to change our experience in life. Right? So each of us here chose to get up this morning and come here for whatever reasons. Right? That's one use of a principle. It's setting an intention and following through on it. Now we may think of that as a little bit mundane, right? So, okay, yeah, but that just meant I was going to the Sunday celebration this morning. Okay, but that's actually a course of events that started from an invisible cause and ended up with a visible effect. You see, we talk about this a lot. There is a law of cause and effect that is always in play. But the cause is not some physical activity that happened. The cause is the mental activity that happened prior to the physical activity coming into being in this experience. And when we get that one idea, that the cause is internal just that one idea can change our entire life. See, all of a sudden, we're not pointing out there, at the priestly class, saying, it's their fault. They're withholding the truth from me. We're not pointing out over there and saying, it's those damn politicians. Whichever flavor. Right? We're not pointing anywhere else to realize that the responsibility for our reaction to life is our own. And it begins in our thinking. So if we have a tendency of thinking that the world is out to get us, the world complies. Right? So another one of those principles is the universe responds by corresponding to the tendency of our thinking. Does that sound mysterious? Is that pretty clear?
Mm-hmm. It's clear.
What you think about is what you get. That's a really clear way of saying it. So if what you're thinking about is that I'm alone and I'm despicable or whatever your little chatter that's going on, let me not do that to you. I apologize. I apologize. I really don't want to put that on anybody. It's just a bad habit of mine. I've been trying to break myself of it for, 40 years. And it slips back in. Okay, I'll talk about my little committee. That way I'm not putting it on you. My little committee likes to get up in the morning and take offense. It can find anything that it wants to take offense against. Usually it's a tradition that its fear lights up and says, rah, 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 rah. Bark back at the world. And so I bark back at the world. And the world barks back at me. And there's a lot more of world than me. So usually by the end of the day I'm saying, oh, that was a humbling experience. Listen, conscience, stay out of it next time. I don't really need that. Now, see, the other part of that I can do, and we each can do this, is I can have that initial response, because that's going to come. Honestly, we've filled our minds with all sorts of stuff that we'd rather not think about, and it's going to flow through from time to time. And in fact, there are billions and billions and uncounted thoughts that we're floating around through. My personal theory is that all of these thoughts have been had by somebody somewhere, which means they're floating around in the experience of humanity. And occasionally I run into one and it smacks me in the face and digs itself into my consciousness, and you ever find yourself saying, who was thinking that? There you go, wait a minute, I was thinking that. Right? Who's the person saying, who was thinking that? You ever get into this? So the point is, that person that's back there who's actually judging the thinking that you're having is the chooser. That's my ability to look at the thoughts I'm having and saying, you know what? I know that there is a law of cause and effect, and I know that the cause is beginning in my invisible thought, and that is beginning to outpicture, to use one of those Holmesian terms, into my experience. And when I recognize that, I can quietly tell my committee to go take a hike. I'm still the CEO. And if you're not quiet, I'm going to fire you. And so they quiet down a little bit, and I can choose a different thought from that initial response to the thought that smacked me in the face when I walked into it, and say, you know what? Maybe I can be love here. Maybe I don't have to go through the pain of all of that pushing against something that I'm eventually going to surrender to, and just jump to the surrender part. And say, okay, I can respond differently. I can be the love that I don't feel I'm quite receiving right now. And as I become the love that is expressing into the world, I experience more love in my life, and therefore I get to express that outwardly in the world as love. That was all on the invisible side. And when I turn that around and I can keep working with it and continue to build that into the tendency of my thoughts, then I can look back one day and I look and I say, wow, how did all this love get into my life? Because maybe by then I've forgotten that there was a time when I was feeling unlucky or put upon or positional. So occasionally I like to stop and take a break and look at how much has changed because I changed my thinking. You see, there is a law that is always responding. When I first heard that in this teaching of the science of mind and spirit, I was terrified. I don't know if anybody else gets the willies one. There is a law that is always responding to my thoughts. Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Think of some of those thoughts. You know what's really great about this human experience that we have? Is it doesn't manifest immediately. Can you imagine what would happen if everybody's thoughts came into being right now? No! Let me out of this madhouse! But once we realize that this law, this principle, is always in effect, we start to become more aware of what we're thinking. And as we become more aware of what we're thinking, we become more active in guiding that thinking towards what we want rather than what we don't want. That's not that mysterious, is it? It sounds a little mysterious. Okay, let's be, happy-go-lucky and skip down the lane of tragedy and discomfort. But the reality is even when we're in challenging situations, we can choose to think differently about them, to take the authorship of our lives and put that into the world rather than to blame some outside external force for the life that we have. So remember that. We're always using it. And that brings up the big question, which I'd like to leave you with today. It's not an uplifting question. How am I using my thinking? And here's the little mysterious part. Each one of us is an individual expression of a divine idea. The idea of life itself. And the rest is up to us. So this divine power, this divine source that created all of this, that created each one of us from the star stuff of the universe, Deepak Chopra says that half of our atoms are from a different galaxy. Get with that one, man. That all of this came together for us to be in this room right here, right now. To experience life more fully. To recognize that we have the opportunity to choose the nature of our thoughts. And that we can choose to be the love that Emma was talking about. That we talk about here often. We can be beneficial presences in the world. Everyone we come in contact with, we can uplift. We have that magical power, that mysterious power of being able to uplift other people by our very presence. When we're expressing that love, that harmony, that peace that is spirit. So I invite you, as you go about your week, be aware of what you're thinking. And choose good thoughts. I know I'll try to. And so it is.
So
So it is.